My friendship with Leela began the day we decided to go up the dark stairs that led, step after step, flight after flight, to the door of Don Aquiles' apartment. I remember the violet light of the courtyard, the smells of a warm spring evening. The mothers were making dinner. It was time to go home, but we delayed, challenging each other, without ever saying a word, testing our courage. For some time, in school and outside of it, that was what we had been doing. Leela would thrust her hand and then her whole arm into the black mouth of a manhole, and I, in turn, immediately did the same, my heart pounding, hoping that the cockroaches wouldn't run over my skin, that the rats wouldn't bite me. Leela climbed up to Signora Spagnuolo's ground-floor window, and, hanging from the iron bar that the clothesline was attached to, swung back and forth, then lowered herself down to the sidewalk. And I immediately did the same, although I was afraid of falling and hurting myself. Leela stuck into her skin the rusted safety pin that she had found on the street somewhere, but kept in her pocket like the gift of a fairy godmother. I watched the metal point as it dug a whitish tunnel into her palm, and then, when she pulled it out and handed it to me, I did the same. At some point she gave me one of her firm looks, eyes narrowed, and headed toward the building where Don Aquile lived. I was frozen with fear. Don Aquile was the ogre of fairy tales. I was absolutely forbidden to go near him, speak to him, look at him, spy on him. I was to act as if neither he nor his family existed. Regarding him there was, in my house but not only mine, a fear and a hatred whose origin I didn't know. The way my father talked about him, I imagined a huge man, covered with purple boils, violent in spite of the don, which to me suggested a calm authority. He was a being created out of some unidentifiable material, iron, glass, nettles, but alive, the hot breath streaming from his nose and mouth. I thought that if I merely saw him from a distance, he would drive something sharp and burning into my eyes. So if I was mad enough to approach the door of his house, he would kill me. I waited to see if Leela would have second thoughts and turn back. I knew what she wanted to do. I had hoped that she would forget about it, but in vain. The street lamps were not yet lighted, nor were the lights on the stairs, but from the apartments came irritable voices. To follow Leela, I had to leave the bluish light of the courtyard and enter the black of the doorway. When I finally made up my mind, I saw nothing at first. There was only an odor of old junk and DDT. Then I got used to the darkness and found Leela sitting on the first step of the first flight of stairs. She got up, and we began to climb. We kept to the side where the wall was, she 2 steps ahead, I 2 steps behind, torn between shortening the distance or letting it increase. I can still feel my shoulder inching along the flaking wall, and the idea that the steps were very high, higher than those in the building where I lived. I was trembling. Every footfall, every voice was Don Aquile, creeping up behind us or coming down toward us with a long knife, the kind used for slicing open a chicken breast. There was an odor of sautéing garlic. Maria, Don Aquiles' wife, would put me in the pan of boiling oil. The children would eat me. He would suck my head the way my father did with mullets. We stopped often, and each time I hoped that Leela would decide to turn back. I was all sweaty. I don't know about her. Every so often she looked up, but I couldn't tell at what.